Hey, what's going on, guys? My name is Phil, for those that don't know, and this video is going to be about the rebalance testing that we had on the public playtest this past weekend. There's a few things that I want to bring my perspective from, and maybe even insight a little bit from PGI's side. Obviously, this is a non-official video, but I figured it was something that needed to be done to help sort of clear the air of a few things. All right, so first things first, the playtest. I want you guys to know that the clan versus IS balance, as far as the rebalance, hasn't even happened yet. The PTS that you guys downloaded on Friday and then you guys participated in was literally to test variable sensor ranges with information warfare attributes like info gathering and the target acquisition delay and target retention and stuff like this. Now, before you jump all over that, I need you to understand a few things. That literally was the first test for that system. And, PGI gets a lot of, crap for not putting stuff on PTS and testing and theory crafting this and that. That was literally a test. So what does that mean for you and for me as a player? First off, what did we learn from it? We learned that, mechs, especially heavies and assaults, having only 500 meters sensor range, created problems because it effectively gave all other mechs outside an ECM. So this hurt situational awareness for players. This hurt the ability for certain mechs to actually engage LRMs and stuff with lock-on weapons, and that's really, some of the nuances of it all. So is this set in stone? Absolutely not. I can tell you that me personally, I've already taken notes, and Russ and Paul definitely will get them, and of course they're gathering all the feedback as well. So it's one of those things where that aspect may not stay in the target retention and target acquisition rate and stuff like that. I think target acquisition rate was actually something sort of cool, and for those that don't know, basically what it was is if you have 800 meter sensor range and you're looking at a target and it crosses over, depending on that number, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 0, with how many seconds your red Dorito would pop up. Now, after your red Dorito pops up is when target info gathering starts happening. What is target info gathering? Well, target info gathering is the weapons and your paper doll and stuff like that on the enemy mech. Now, target info gathering, Kaniyashi made a great video about the PTS, and he broke down something that I just sort of take for granted. I didn't, think a lot of people didn't know about this, but target info gathering, or as TIG, works already in-game on production. And this is from 0 to 100 meters. To get that paper doll is 1 second. From 100 to 500 is 3 seconds, and 500 plus is 5 seconds. So what does that mean in regards to this PTS? So if you add a mech that had that target acquisition time of 0, that means that as soon as something crossed into its sensor range, it would automatically go to its TIG. And then it would count down depending on the range to the target. So really, all that was done on that was all they are is quirkable, and they're modded. That's all that really is. Now, there is also something I need to clear up about this. Some of you guys saw like 300% on the short range on TIG, and you're like, oh my god, that's ridiculous. All that is a multiplier instead of an additive, and it's like 2 or 3 seconds. That's it. That's all. 200%, that means 2 seconds. Now, on the reverse side, maybe it needs to be projected to the player a little bit better. So what that means is, instead of a multiplier, maybe it doesn't need to just be additive. Totally concede on that. I think that's a great idea. Let's go ahead and dive into weapon quirks. For those that don't know, weapon quirks were completely removed. Now, albeit there was some mess ups. There was the Timberwolf and Summoner had it, and also the Mauler. Those are totally just input. The Summoner and Timberwolf are going to be fixed. Actually, they're already fixed and inputted. The Mauler just had its leftover quirks and hadn't been inputted yet. So, there were 3 mechs that actually had a negative 5% heat gen, and that was the Urban Mech, the Locust, and the Commando. And why is that? It's because they actually have to equip a under 250 engine, and then they have to assign heat sinks, and because of that, they don't get the full true double heat efficiency, like the generator. Anyways, that's where that is, just to clarify. That's the only weapon quirks currently in. Now, some of you guys are saying, but I love my weapon quirks, and some of you guys are like, I fucking hated the weapon quirks. That's all right. So let me give a little bit of perspective of why weapon quirks were taken off the plate. And this video is going to go in depth a little bit more into balance and overall just looking at some of the systems in MWO. So the first thing you need to understand is that Paul wanted to make changes to the weapon systems IS and Clan for the past, months. But one of the problems was that we had absurd weapon quirk values out there, like the gridiron or like, the 4G or whatever it was, 5SS. Now, yes, some of those quirks made some of those mechs viable in the firepower department against the clans and that whole thing. But from his perspective, one of the things was, I cannot make adjustments because as soon as I alter one thing, it's going to have this unchartable, unknown factor to what it's going to do. And sort of a case in point, which was when the large lasers came into the large laser heat, ghost heat change from 2 to 3 happened. And then you saw the rise of large lasers happen, and then the mechs that had either large laser weapon specific and or large just general heat and energy, and you saw that weapon system just explode. Stalker 3F was able to do what it does, and other mechs and stuff like that. Now, some of you guys may say that's not a problem. Well, when you're looking at this entire rebalance system, I need to clarify the rebalance. What you guys saw isn't necessarily the clan versus IS balance yet. The rebalance is the underlying systems fixing some of those and then building on top of that. So in regards to like weapon quirks or the current production, what we have in current production, just think of this as a complete revisit and saying we're systematically looking at every single mech from the torso yaw to the excel to the torso twist speed to the structure to the armor to the weapon placement, high, medium, low, to the modules it has, to, and in the case of our weapon quirks coming back. Now, I can't give you an official response on that. That's up to Paul and Russ, but I have talked to them. Those are still on the table, guys. But what does that mean? You're not going to see 20, 30, 40, 50% values if they do come back. And they would probably be even global. So, for instance, on the Hunchback 4G, you may get to distinguish it specifically from like the gridiron, instead of just mobility, protection, and infotech, it may just have like a 10% cooldown, and it would affect 10% cooldown on all of its weapons, whereas the gridiron, maybe the gridiron doesn't have a cooldown, maybe it has just more structure or more armor, or those are the type of things, or maybe you give it a range and a velocity increase or whatever. So weapon quirks are not off the table, but for this rebalancing purpose, the whole idea was we need to get rid of the weapon quirks to then possibly make changes overall. And that way you can see a clear picture. So weapon quirks, all right, we talked about that. Let's go and talk about a few other things. Let's talk about a few of the core systems behind the scenes on mechs, and understand sort of what this rebalance system is actually doing. Because when we say rebalance system, the rebalance system isn't sensor range, it isn't target info gathering, it isn't the information warfare. You need to wipe that clear. The rebalance system, what they're talking about is behind the scenes, this spreadsheet that Russ talked about on the town hall, which is that it measures and tracks every intricacy, every value of a mech, and then it lets them be able to balance that mech. That is actually working as intended. I can tell you that that is actually right on spot. Is the system working? And so how do you test that? Well, first off, how the system works is all the mechs, their base values, were plugged in, and that doesn't include weapon quirks. That includes all the base mobility, how much structure it has, what's the potential max armor, how many modules it has, and then as you can see, info warfare was the same on all mechs. So then what you could do is you could actually see the outliers as far as this mech score that Russ talked about. So in the case of like a prime example would be the Hellbringer Prime left torso. It's a go-to for the Hellbringer. It's amazing. It has 3 energy slots, it has ECM, and the other left torsos, meh. So I can tell you that the test for the system, which was, can you actually see that left torso is exceedingly and altogether better? And the answer was yes. And so what that allows PGI to be able to do is then track every single stat, and they can bring that left torso down a bit. They can buff the other ones up to that level. The system is working, and I want people to understand that there's a difference between what they saw in PTS and this rebalance system, this ability to track all the attributes. So let's go ahead and dive into the whole discussion of some of the underlying systems, what I was talking about, which is one of the problems we had before quirks were even introduced is you sort of had this power creep. And this power creep was in the form of, not weapons, because we didn't have weapon quirks at the time, but it was in the power creep of new chassis and variants being introduced that would obsolete previous chassis and or variants. So case in point, Hunchback 4G on the picture versus the Shadowhawk. Before the Shadowhawk was introduced, or the 55-tonner Shadowhawk, Wolverine, and Griffin at the time, the Hunchback 4G was just an overall better ballistic platform than the Centurion because it had more right torso, survivability, but also it had a drawback, which was it had a gigantic torso with no gameplay incentive or reason for being there, so it was just more of a detriment. But my point being is, introduce the Shadowhawk, and then now you had a 55-tonner, so it had more tonnage available. It had jump capability, so it has a one-up on the Hunchback. Not only that, is it didn't have this gigantic hunch, it had a smaller and even higher placed ballistic platform and had the same amount of energy. And you can see where this is going. So that was the power creep beforehand. And so the systems, what we're talking about here is that the Hunchbacks in general all need to be different. And the problem with it is how a mech's excel, DXL, turn speed, torso twist speed, and all those mainly are affected by the engine size. So no matter what engine you put on, those are multiplier, it go behind the scenes multipliers that affect the XL, DXL. That's why when you take a stock 4G and you put a bigger engine, you're faster, you're more agile and stuff like that. Well, that leads to a problem because that basically means all Hunchbacks are the same, unless in some mech cases there are a few variants that have bigger engines, so those potentially can move a little bit faster and or slower. Prime example would be the Cataphract 4X. It's got a ridiculously low, I think it's like a 200 engine, so obviously it's going to be more sluggish and can't move as quick and stuff like that. So the system behind the scenes, what it's doing is it's breaking down and looking at each mech individually, and it can say, okay, well, we know that the 4G is sort of used mainly for just in close fighting, so we're going to give it a percentage boost in and turn speed. Whereas another one, you may say, well, it needs to be able to get up to speed and stop really quick, like the 4SP or something like that. Or it needs to have XL, DXL, and turn speed. Not so much worried about, whether attribute like firepower, protection, or something like that. So that's a system that inherently needed to be fixed, in my opinion. And that's what this sort of system does. So if you look behind on the PTS, if you look behind the IS and clan balance, if you just wipe that clean, because that wasn't the object of it, and you saw the nuances of the mechs, you could be like, okay, I see, this one's a little bit tankier, but this one has a little bit more maneuverability. And then the nuances between them were, as far as firepower, was the hard points themselves. So the example that a lot of people have been talking about is the Gridiron versus the 4G. The Gridiron is the tankiest Hunchback on the PTS server compared to the 4G, but the 4G has a little bit more maneuverability and stuff like that. Now, going back to the weapon quirk things, that's where slight weapon quirks could help diversify mechs just a little bit further without introducing the huge power gap that is right now with the current quirks. So I will concede that, that is a great idea, and that is a possibility. That isn't off the table. And again, I'm speaking unofficially here, but a little bit of insight from my perspective and being able to talk to Paul and Russ. And Russ is adamant, none of this is going to production until it is ready. So that is one thing he is adamant about, and I'm just conveying that to you because he is all about that. So, all right. What are other systems that are sort of imbalanced? Let's go ahead and dive into modules. And this is actually something that's really cool, is that with this rebalance system, you can actually assign modules on a per mech basis. So you have a mech that's already fantastic in firepower and lethality. You don't necessarily have to give it consumable or 2 consumables or 2 modules, or maybe you take away that extra mech module, or you take away that consumable and you give it an extra weapon. That's sort of what makes it unique, and in that sort of glass cannon they can load up on stuff, especially on mechs that, like the Hunchback 4P, you know, even if you just say, well, it's supposed to run like sort of medium laser or whatever, you know, 2 weapon modules are all it really needs, because you have medium laser cooldown, medium laser range, right? So 3 weapon modules really wouldn't be adequate or even really needed on that. But something like the Centurion 9A with 3 different types of weapon systems, it's a hardpoints it's able to take, it may be beneficial, maybe even 4. You know, it's one of those things that's added to. And the cool thing is, with the mech modules being able to be played with here too, is that you're able to allow mechs to put modules like radar deprivation, advanced target decay, seismic, and then there's sensor and, you know, target info gathering and stuff. So it allows them to take more than just the average, you know, 1 or 2. Speaking of which, let's go ahead and talk about radar retention and a target acquisition time. Or target acquisition detection, I think, is the technical quirk input. So something you may have also noticed assigned to mechs throughout the PTS was that target retention time was plus or minus. Now, let me state here that the base default level for target retention is 2 seconds. Target decay, that's what it is. So that means if you're in a completely stock mech, no modules whatsoever, and they're in a stock mech, no modules, and you target them, and they move behind cover, you have 2 seconds where you'll still have their information, their paper doll and red Dorito, and you're following them, and then bloom, they're gone. So what target retention quirk does is it either adds on top of that or removes it. It's additive. So you'll notice that some mechs have like -1, -2. Well, that means if they're -2, you have 0 target retention. So if something moves behind cover, they're instantly gone. On the reverse side, if they have more, that means you lock on and hold. So why do I think this is actually really cool and important? It's because radar deprivation, since its introduction, has been the dominant module around. Like, it is the best module, hands to date. It'll save your ass. And or if you don't have it, you quickly realize it when your ass is getting locked onto and fired upon when you're behind cover, and you're like, how is this possible? So with target retention time, some people out there were just focused on missiles. You guys are totally missing the point. Target info warfare and just info warfare is important. It's not firepower important, and the waiting isn't to be that. Totally understand. But knowing where your enemy is, and or being able to lock on, keep track of him, know his movement and or his damage loadout, and or be able to engage firepower or allow your teammates to do the same is actually beneficial. Now, some of you guys out there maybe be like, it's not that beneficial. True. Waiting isn't as high, obviously. You know, the potential to do damage to target is there, and potential to be able to track your target is there, and that is important. So that is tangible. That is something. Now, some of you guys are arguing that information warfare shouldn't be weighted anywhere close to firepower, mobility, and stuff like that. Totally agree, and it's not. So it's one of those things where target retention is actually really cool, in my opinion. It allows certain light mechs, certain mechs, the dragons, some dragons got them, is to be able to lock onto a target and be a tanky sort of mech where you can lock onto a target, hold on target, maybe take a hit or two while your teammates are getting the info, or you yourself being able to engage a target. So target retention's there. The target acquisition delay, TAD, that's in there, is the new mechanic that went in. It's actually not new. Actually, believe it or not, everyone has it. It's on production right now. The difference is it's instantaneous for everyone. So for instance, 800 meters on production right now, a mech crosses over. That means if that mech stays at 799 meters, it'll take 5 seconds for you to lock on and get that target info gathering. You'll see the red Dorito pop up instantaneously, and that's what TAD is. It's that red Dorito. It's how long does it take it before your sensors go, oh, there's a target, locked on, you get the red Dorito, 1,000, 2, 3, 4, 5, boom, mech info. All right. So TAD is already in there. And the cool thing that I like about TAD is it's a mechanic that can be used to help balance mechs, especially powerful mechs. But I know a lot of suggestions out there are, hey, we like the idea of TAD, we see, but maybe you reverse it to where it's based on the weight of a mech, So for instance, if I'm in a locust or if I'm in a spider, that if that assault tries locking onto me, it just inherently takes longer. Or if that assault tries locking on a hunchback, it may take a little bit less and stuff like that. And if it's another assault, instantaneous or something. So I think it's a great idea. I think definitely Paul and Russ will be open to it. I'm just looking at from the perspective that's already in game and it's a tool they can use. Now, in this reference, TAD would be basically like it could be assigned on a per-mech basis, like it is. Or you could just say globally we want all assaults this or all assaults that, and we'd use it to help debuff mech. So for instance, it wouldn't be based on the weight, it would just be whatever mech you're locking onto or you're riding around in. But anyways, I think those are really cool. So another nuance about balance that you guys need to understand, if you haven't really looked into it, is the clan mechs. So for those that aren't familiar, clan tech altogether is better, usually. Now, I'm going to preface this. Indo and Pharaoh. In MWO, they're weight-saving tools. And what is the trade-off? There is a negative to Indo and Pharaoh, and it's crit space. So on the IS side of things, you have Indo and Pharaoh both take up 14 crit slots each, and then you get X amount of free tonnage back, right? Well, that's why you see a lot of lights are able to take Indo and Pharaoh, and then mediums, heavies, and assaults, usually just Indo and some mechs, some assault mechs, no Indo just because they need more crit space. Now you look to the clan side of things. The clan side of things is that Indo and Pharaoh only takes up 7 crit slots. 7. So basically where almost all mechs in the IS side only can take Indo, if not Indo and Pharaoh on the light side. There are mechs on the clan side that have Indo and Pharaoh, so they get the benefit of both systems. Then on top of that, you've also got another system which is double heat sinks. Now double heat sinks for clan and IS are exact same as far as heat efficiency. The difference here is that crit space. And that one crit space less on the clans is huge. And not to mention, for the most part, they're not using as many crit space for the Indo and Pharaoh. So you have to take that into consideration. Now, some mechs don't have, on clan side, don't have Indo or don't have Pharaoh, or they don't have both. Now, I will tell you that this balance system that Paul and Russ are talking about takes that into account. So, for instance, if this summoner, for example, has Pharaoh and no Indo, it takes that into account and gives us some points back to sort of compensate. You also have to look at a few other things, which is the clan mechs inherently have a few flaw systems with omnipods, and that is what we were talking about earlier, which is because you can min-max and find the perfect combination, it creates imbalances as far as there's go-to sometimes omnipods. The Hellbringer Prime left torso is an example. That is a seriously amazing hard point, and it sort of makes Hellbringers. If you see a Hellbringer without one, you're like, wow, like that's, why don't you have ECM? Shadowcat. There's no reason not to have ECM. There's no other trade-off. And so this inherently, I need to break down clan mechs a bit for you and sort of look at a few things. First off, you have to look at, all right guys, I'm back. Sorry about that. Sort of, my wife called, had to answer it. Totally like lost track. I was talking about hard points that are obviously straight up better, and that they're usually go-tos like the Shadowcat left torso with ECM, Hellbringer left torso, right torso of the Timberwolf S, anyways, we could list out a few here. So the nuances of the clans are that some clan mechs are inherently better just because of the Indo-Pharaoh, and then they're usually at the top of the food chain. There's other factors, is they have amazing hardpoint locations. That's actually what sort of saves the Hellbringer. If it wasn't for the ECM, it wouldn't be as powerful as it is. Now granted, it has a lot of weapon choice, so the ECM and the hardpoint choice gives it a lot of potential, not to mention the clan weapons in general. The clan weapons are inherently better. They hit harder, right? They do more damage, and then you've got the ability to build up your heat capacity and heat dissipation with a ton of double heat sinks. So one of the problems is because some of these attributes are multiplied by the engine, and inherently creates a Stormcrow and Timberwolf or Cauldronborn that is inherently super fast. I'm talking the agility, the actual numbers behind, like if you actually look up, and that's why the Stormcrow is as agile it is, or the Timberwolf is as agile it is. Now some of you guys out there would be like, well, the Timberwolf is supposed to be fast and supposed to be the pinnacle and stuff like this. The speed, the top speed of the mech is supposed to be. And that's one of the problems that, you know, MWO runs into and PGI runs into, is that there is no translation of the accel and deaccel and turn and yaw angle from the tabletop, and people just expect these mechs to perform as good as they do, and oh, you shouldn't touch them. And that's where the systems are inherently unbalanced, and that's where you have to say that Timberwolf top speed remains, you know, 86, or in this case 89.1. That particular mech should not be as agile as the Summoner, as the Hellbringer, depending on the case. And now I say that, I'm just saying in generalized terms, it's accel, deaccel rates. And so if you'll notice, like when you mouse over mechs right now, clan mechs and omnipods on the PTS, all you saw was, well, some mechs you saw negatives, some mechs you saw positives. But if you moused over the CT, you saw a whole lot of negatives or positives. Now, the problem with this is, as you and me as a player, if I didn't know this, I would assume all of them are just straight negatives. Like, oh my god, there's just negatives everywhere. But in reference to the Stormcrow currently on production has 135 degrees yaw. So if you were to mouse over on PTS and you saw, holy shit, negative 45, but you didn't mouse over the different torsos and arms because they may be positive and negative as well, that stack and add, you have to scroll down to the little graph to see where your numbers are. So that's sort of a problem. And that's something that I think just needs to be, you know, adjusted so that you as a player understand that. Well, let me backtrace. So you may be wondering, well, why don't you just change the base values instead of just quirking it? And that's something that, you know, they have to decide on is do we want to chase these base values, which obviously are multipliers? And I would say probably not. So, you know, that's where the quirks come in. But what needs to happen is it needs to be sort of displayed to the player properly, which is when you mouse over a clan mech and its info stats, that you see its yaw angle. That's not in a graph. Just display it in a number, or the twist speed, or the accel, deaccel, and stuff like that. So you understand that this mech and its base stats. So each clan mech has these base stats that are attached to the CT, and then whatever omnipod you select, and even legs and head now actually have you know, attributes that they alter that CT, add or take away, or, you know, and so whatever if you min-max in this nature, a Stormcrow, it's going to have inherently some mobility and or in the future. And so this is something I'm going to toss out to you. Now, this sort of goes into the clan versus IS balance, but one thing you can do to particular mechs, even on the IS side, but in particular on clan side, because you can target where these things happen on what omnipods, the Hellbringer left torso, to help balance that particular prime left torso, technically what you could do is PGI could say, you know, hey, we're going to hit it slight in mobility. We're going to hit it slightly maybe in target acquisition delay. But then we're going to give it a 10% reduction in structure to that torso, or maybe even a 25. Now, some of you guys may be like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I'm talking about the bigger picture here, is that left torso is the end-all be-all. You know, so those are strategic things you could technically do. You could even say, instead of a protection hit to structure, you could give it a negative 5% to laser duration, or -5 to cooldown, or something like that, to where, because it's so strong, we're going to knock it down in different aspects here. Those are the type of things that they can do with the clans, is they can literally strategically and scientifically look at each mech. People were bringing up the Direwolf, that you were able to create a Direwolf with no negatives. That is something that as soon as I saw it, I looked, and yeah, sure enough, you could. And so that can be strategically altered. And that's sort of the premise, you know, about this entire thing, is that you guys out there, and instead of just jumping to the gun. Now, I will concede that communication about this, this PTS was about sensors, about information warfare, about testing to find any like broken things, like you guys found the Enforcer 5P, the Gargoyle Prime right arm, the Executioner B left torso, the Timberwolf S completely had no rebalance stuff, the Mauler and stuff like that. You're there to find, that was the sort of purpose. So that should be communicated about. But I also want to point to you that you guys, the players, need to understand that that was the whole point of this, was for you to get on, right, and to help test this. And that's what I encourage you to do. Like, I get the constructive criticism, and I understand that some of you guys don't agree with some of the decisions. And I think we all just have to understand there's so many opinions out there that PGI has to do the best they can, and of course, one of those is communication. They need to be, clear and concise with what these tests are going to be doing and what they're looking for. That being said, moving forward, as far as the clan mechs, those are the type of things that sort of need to happen as far as to bring down some of these mechs or buff up. Not all clan mechs are amazing because either Indo-Pharaoh or they don't have the tonnage to be able to do anything awesome. So that's where the system comes in. It can buff them in these different attributes to make them, desirable to a player. Now, speaking of clan versus IS balance, let's go dive into a few things and just sort of mech and MWO. I need to say, first off, what's really tough is that right now, as far as information warfare, and this is something I had a discussion with a few community members. Shout out to Siri and a few of the SJR guys and a few other members that were just sort of chilling. But one of the things they brought up, which is the idea of information warfare that makes it really tough, is that is there any current reason to lock onto a target other than as a player guide, as far as a sort of, not crutch, but a player helper, if you will, to be able to know where your enemy is? And yeah, you get the paper doll and stuff, so it helps you know where to aim. But as a vet player, if you're shooting at the right torso, you know to shoot the right torso. Oh, okay, it's not XL, go straight for the CT or whatever. But there is some useful knowledge. Sometimes you may scrape someone's legs and you notice it goes from green to automatically red. Hey, they don't have leg armor, just sweep the legs, stuff like that. But I guess what I'm getting at is he brought up something that was quite unique, and he said until information warfare outweighs or adds to firepower, or with firepower being so dominant, until it does that, there's really no role for some of these mechs. And so in case, let's talk about the Locust 1V. Now currently it's got these absurd weapon quirks and it can be a poking nightmare, but in all honesty, it's never going to be viable. It's never going to be competitive. And even with a rebalance pass on it, it may not be that, and that's fine. But one of the problems it has is that it's not capping quicker. It's not doing anything that the fire starter can't do. When it locks onto targets, it doesn't get anything special or anything like that. So I think that's the real challenge. And kudos, Siri brought up this, and he said something like armored warfare, where if you're a scout or a tank, when you actually lock onto a target, you actually do 10%, 15%, however, whatever percent X value damage. Now, some of you guys, whoa, where's that magical damage coming from? We can argue, or we can break it down. We can say, well, all weapons across the board get a 10% hit across the board. So when you do this extra, it's actually just the full potential. Some of you be, whoa, how, why, magical, stuff like that. At the end of the day, it is a game. Two, you could justify it by whatever means. The targeting computer has better calculations and this and that. Whatever we got to do. But that may give it something. So all mechs, when they lock onto a target, then do the full potential damage to said target. So that actually gives it a reason to do more damage to target, lock on and get those locks. You also have some other things that outside, it needs to be able to do something outside firepower, because that Locust 1V is never going to be able to compete against its bigger brethren. It's not going to be able to do it. So that's where, is it going to be able to go faster? 170 kph coming to 150, but when that, other mechs can just one-shot it. So it's one of those things where it needs to be able to do other things that the others can't. So whether it's being able to cap a little bit quicker and stuff like that. Now, that's where I feel that some of you guys need to understand there is a limit to what this rebalance in general can do to this game and to the mechs. What has to happen after that is game modes have to be designed based around the mechs and sort of this new focus on, time to kill and mech on mech combat and information warfare being a pillar of this. And that's where the game modes have to be adjusted and sort of come in to make at least the Locust and or Commando or another light, so it's not always about I can do X amount of damage to you and kill you quicker. And so I'll leave it there. That's that's one of those things where that's something separate. But to be fair, I think a lot of people need to understand that you don't just slap on absurd quirks on some of these mechs to make up the difference, because again, that leads to power creep, that leads to time to kill issues. Let's talk about also my sort of understanding of the clan and IS balance. One of the things is a lot of you guys don't want something homogenized. And let me define what I'm talking about here. A lot of you guys just don't want clans weapons brought down, and then they're performing on the same level as IS. So what a lot of people want is the clans to be OP in nature and firepower. They want them to be that way. But the trade-off is IS would be tankier, maybe a little bit more agile in aspects, and so it's a trade-off. Maybe, and then some clan mechs are less tanky, and so they've got more face time, they've got more range, but the trade-off is now if they take some hits, or if they're closed in, they're done. So you've got this sort of yin and yang relationship back and forth. And the problem is, if you propose across the board all clan weapons get nerfed, then you're homogenizing things a little bit closer. So I understand that there are some things to consider here. So on the PTS, a lot of you guys noticed that some mechs were on IS side were tankier than before, and some, like the ASMD, were like it's 2 times the amount of structure. So what can Paul and Russ do? Well, I think there needs to be said is, if you want to keep that sort of distinct flavor, which a lot of you do, which I still think the current quirks cause issues, because when you have a 5SS being able to out damage a Timberwolf, so you're artificially buffing this to, in my opinion, it homogenizes things a little bit crazy. That's where I feel that they can make the decision of, say, we're not going to hurt the clan weapons. Maybe strategically they do this or that, but that, okay, yeah, the PTS, we're gonna double or 1.5 times or something the current what you saw in there, as far as like if a Atlas has 2 times as much, maybe it needs a little bit more and so those are the type of things that I think just need to be discussed by people, that there's multiple different ways they could do it. And that there's not just one all end all be all as far as that concern. So I want you guys to discuss that. And so this isn't just this video, yes, I'm just sort of talking, giving you my opinion, but these are the type of discussions that need to happen. And I just want to apologize too, because it's very frustrating being a streamer, and I'm on the PTS, I'm doing this for the first time with you guys, and it's frustrating having to deal with some of the negativity flowing, when sometimes it may come off as cynical or whatever, where you're just trying to be critical, and that's where I'd have to apologize. It is very difficult sometimes. So hopefully you guys understand that, and I am listening. I'm literally taking massive amounts of notes, and I hear you when it comes to clan and weapon balance. But in sort of conclusion, I just want to let you guys know that was not the point of the first PTS. Was not about clan and IS balance. It was not about any of that whatsoever. The IS and clan balance and really strategic nerfing, because that's, you might as well call it nerfing. I call it debuffing, but the strategic buffing and debuffing, or debuffing and nerfing, or whatever you want to call it, really hasn't happened yet as far as IS and clan balance. But as I said, what the system is behind the scenes, they're able to strategically and scientifically actually target these mechs. And that's going to be a tough thing too, because there's so many opinions. As soon as you touch any of these mechs, there's going to be someone that's upset. Someone is going to be upset that the Timberwolf and the Orion are potentially equal in some regards. Let that sink in. That's what Russ said, is you can't look at a 75 to 60. It has to be, that Orion has to be able to compete with that 75 tonner in aspects. And maybe in the perfect case scenario, the Timberwolf comes out on top every single time because it's in its prime environment, open space, stuff like that, range and combat. But maybe, and that's what the system and the rebalance needs to be, is that 75 tonner needs to be able to compete, and may not compete in firepower, but maybe it competes in durability, that protection aspect. Maybe it competes in the maneuverability. Once it gets close, it's able to outmaneuver left and right and turn. And a lot of people aren't going to like that. And that's what the tough thing is sometimes our toys are being played with and taken away. And I'll also concede, one of the tough things right now of seeing weapon quirks going away, and some of you guys have said this, is that I have spent hard money, my money, on buying some of these mechs because the weapon basically because weapon quirks. Gridiron, some of you guys bought the gridiron because you're loving that. I understand that. I totally empathize with that. And that's where I will say, unfortunately, the weapon quirks have sort of led to us being spoiled by some of that. And I still think that weapon quirks have a place on this rebalance. I still think that is a possibility. and that it just won't be the absurd values we see right now. It'll be in other attributes. And I think if people understand that, where the weapon quirks aren't the end all be all, they're hugely weighted though, and that's where this system can measure and see what the outcomes are going to be. But there's trade-offs sometimes. So in the case of like the gridiron or whatever, if it gets a lot of good weapon quirks, then it's going to get hit in other attributes, mobility, protection, and modules. And that's the same thing for clan. And I think that needs to be an important sort of thing said here, is that there always has to be trade-off for things. There has to be a trade-off for uber really good omnipods. There has to be a trade-off for uber really good IS mechs. And anyways, guys, that is going to go ahead and wrap it up for me. If you guys have any questions or comments, feel free to post. Let me know. And again, I'm going to be sitting down and talking, well, not sitting, but talking with Russ and Paul and giving feedback. They've been reading all the feedback from you guys as well. And, I would love to have a ton of community involvement. Everything I'm reading on Reddit, negative or positive or whatever, I'm reading. And those are the type of things that I applaud you to keep doing. It just needs to happen. They're listening. I know I'm listening. I'm going to be taking the feedback, and that's where I feel like the communication can be improved. Scream from the mountaintops, but do so, of course, in a considerate sort of fashion. Don't be a jerk. It comes down to it. If you're a jerk, don't expect an answer. Something like that. So, anyways, guys, I just want to say thank you guys for watching. Hopefully this clears up a little bit of concern, or maybe it doesn't clear up your concern, but you understand the direction it's coming from. You may not agree with some of the direction. You may not agree with some of the things I said, and that's okay. And I want to hear why, and I want to hear your angle from it. And that's where I feel like that sort of adult conversation needs to happen. But that's going to be it for me, guys. Again, for those that don't know, my name is Phil. I go by Sean Lang, SEAN space LANG in game. If you have any questions or concerns, hit me up on our website and or Reddit where you guys see this posted, and I will do my best to respond as soon as possible. But I will see you guys on the battlefield, and if not on stream, as soon as possible. Until next time, Mech Warriors. Peace. Battle Max. Just like to say, on an official note, Twinkie Overlord, I'm very disappointed. No mention of my Master Cicada plan. You missed it on your commandments. Without that, means nothing. Later, guys.